Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another Data and API show. The show that happens every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, which means nothing to myself either because I'm not in the Pacific time zone, but for Silicon Valley folk and West Coast folk, it's a nice morning for you all. So I am joined by a special guest who will probably be here more often than not. Catalin, welcome to the team. Welcome to Hazura. Welcome to the Dating API show. It is good to have you. Why don't you let the people know, kind of, if they don't follow you already, like who you are, what do you do, and give us the rundown.
Hey everyone. First of all, thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me. I'm Catalin Pit. I recently joined Asura. I joined the developer advocacy team. So I will help Asura teach you, I will help you learn GraphQL and how to make the most of GraphQL with Asura. I'm a bit nervous. I didn't do a live stream in a long time now, in 6 or 7 months. So I apologize for that.
No, that is totally acceptable. And I also gave you, I don't know, like 2 hours heads up that I was going to put you on stream today. So that's also less helpful from my side. But you've got a really interesting developer journey, and it's going to kind of be sort of the trend that we're going to be talking about today a little bit, and sort of how that overlaps to what it is you're bringing to Hazura. But why don't you let people kind of know what your journey has been as a developer, and then what brought you then to Hazura, and we can kind of talk a little bit about what that's going to mean for content coming out of Hazura, and even just what you're excited about this coming year.
For sure. So initially I was studying to become an accountant or bank teller or whatever. So I was studying finance. But during my high school days, I moved to the UK, where I went to college and I started studying IT. I think that's how it was called. And from that college, I could only go and study a computer science degree. So that's how I got into tech. That was my path. I started my university, I started programming, I started to learn about this, and soon I just really loved it and continued doing it. I finished university and then I got a job in London. I worked there for 1 year and a bit, but after that, I had to move to Romania, unfortunately, and I couldn't work remotely. So I had to find a role here. I worked for a bit in Romania, and then I got an opportunity to become a developer advocate. That was something new to me. I didn't actively think of becoming one. It just came. I was advocating for the product. I was active in the community. So I was offered the role. And after that role, here I am at Hasura in a similar role.
Yeah, developer advocacy is a weird role, because for one, there's no definition out there. Like, every company is going to identify or will describe that job description differently, and there's very few common trends that go throughout. I mean, you might have people who are speakers, that go out there and just blab. You may have people that just do a lot of really in-depth tutorials, or people who just write tons of open source code and answer questions. And the unicorn developer advocate is one that does all of that at the same time and delivers. But the one thing that's very common and for people who get into that role and then get excited about it. And this is something that's even sort of built a little bit of the footprint you have on the internet, is this like learner's mentality, people who are excited about just learning things, but then the way that they validate their own learning is that sharing it back out and teaching what they've learned. Now, I mean, I could make inferences about that path for you, but how was that journey for you in terms of what did you like when you first realized that you actually really like teaching so much? Because you have a lot of good content out there. What was sort of that journey for you in getting to that point?
Thank you. I really appreciate it. So, how did it start? I started with Twitter. I've seen someone from Romania in the developer ecosystem, and I said, if he can do it, I can do it as well. And I started sharing stuff from my life or my journey. For example, if I did an interview, I wrote about what I did or what I learned, and that's how it started. Then I started my blog shortly after by solving lead code uh, problems. I did that because when you teach something or when you write about it, you learn better, and the knowledge stays in your brain for longer. And from there, I started to blog about anything, how I solved issues, bugs, what I learned, and basically that's why I started my blog and even my YouTube channel. So, in a nutshell, that's how I started with all of this. I didn't start it to get a job or to get into this field, even though it's good that it came. But I started it to share stuff, meet new people, and learn things better, and share them with others.
So you're very much the learn in public advocate then, where because there's the people who really like teaching things when they find something interesting and they think, oh, this piece could really help a lot of people that I know because it solves a lot of problems that I've seen, and they're really excited about the teaching part of it, which is totally valid. I'd almost think that I tend to fall more into the excited about teaching category because I think that it's really, I like just when I discover something, I like sharing the discovery. And then there's people who just love the learning in public, where it's I'm learning this for myself and I'm bringing you along on the journey about kind of the roadmap that I took to get there. And I think that's really interesting to see how that's been playing out for you.
And it's also nice because you get, how can I say, you get your knowledge corrected by others. So if you make mistakes or if you teach the wrong things, people will correct you, will help you, some in a nicer way, some in not a nice way, but still, if you can learn from any experience, you can progress quite fast and learn much better.
I mean, feedback is feedback.
Yeah.
Of it, some of it comes from a good place. Some of it doesn't sound like it comes from a good place. Sometimes that does too, but yeah. I mean, I've talked to people who like the downvote button, like people who actually genuinely liked using dislike as a way of providing constructive feedback for YouTube channels. And I was just like, that is just the most screaming into the void negativity button that I could imagine. But some people like really know that's actually a way for me to help train like the person, let them know what I like. I was like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, I don't mind like how negative a comment is as long as it provides the reason. So it says this is super bad, because then it's fine because I know what to improve.
Yeah, and that is totally the thing, because it could also be that you delivered something way off. Like,
Of course.
if you introduce a security bug in the code you're suggesting people like use, you want to know, and a little bit of helpful.
Of course. I did that many times. put something that wasn't that accurate, people corrected me. I updated the article or whatever that was, or I took it down. So
in a past life, I used to write nutritional documentation for a food startup, and I invented a couple of different proteins that don't actually exist because of typos that I had made and then propagated forward, and I wasn't being corrected carefully. But yeah, I mean, inventing new proteins, like that could be onto something. But now you studied finance, or were studying to be going into finance. Do you foresee bringing that into any of the content you're producing? Is that still a passion of yours, or was that more of a path that made sense at the time and you've since abandoned, or how do you see that playing out for you?
it was the path that made sense at the time. That's what I was studying at high school in Romania, but I don't really think I'll be incorporating that into my stuff. I didn't get too far into finances as well. I was able to do only 2 years in finances, or yeah, it's something like that in Romania. It's accountancy and all that stuff. So I never thought about it, but so far I didn't incorporate it.
It's a little bit dangerous to be a web developer these days with any kind of finance background. You're going to get all kinds of offers to be the technical co-founder of whatever garbage.
I didn't get any of those yet. Maybe after
Not
this
yet. Keep that LinkedIn profile tight, bud. That's going to be it's the only thing worse than having a JavaScript anywhere on your resume and all the Java jobs that come your way. It's like not the same. Not the same.
I get like 2 or 3 Java senior positions each week.
Java, yeah. Oh yeah. So, in terms of this, the thing that you're excited about, so the teaching, the learning in public, what was your prior experience, if any, with Hazura itself as a product, or even the GraphQL ecosystem before joining?
In my first job, I used GraphQL extensively. We had a product which was used by all the teams internally to test all the other products. And for some reason, because it wasn't maintained actually, it couldn't be used anymore. So I spent a good chunk of time on that, but it was like simple GraphQL. We didn't use front-end frameworks, Apollo or stuff like that. So that's my experience with GraphQL. And when it comes to Hasura, last year I saw an article from a friend who at the time was a developer advocate at a company, and he wrote an article which said something like build a full stack application with no backend code or something like that. So that intrigued me, coming from a backend, how do you say, from a backend landscape
Perspective.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I wanted to see how is that possible, or how he did it. And that's the first time I came across Hasura. I read his blog article. I played with it a bit. I wanted to see how it works, and that's how it started. And then Universe has an interesting way of working. I came across the developer advocate position, and I was also approached by a recruiter. So we started talking, and here we are.
Yeah, because Hazura is one of those funny products. Because if you've been in the advocacy space or built products before, a lot of times you will work in a very specific part of the stack, like working specifically for a CMS, and so a lot of the content you're making is solving CMS problems, or you're working in a CDN part of the stack. So you're solving CDN problems. Or you're doing a lot of these things that will be a lot of times very specific to the product. And with Hasura, because it just sits at this really like unique part of the stack that's really essentially the replacing of glue code, if you will. It's like this coordination of your data layer sits between all of your services and all of your clients. It's just like there's not an application you can't build with it. And so when you're wanting to kind of teach what's possible or show things that are possible, it's like, what do I want to build today? It's just anything is really possible. Yeah, it's a good problem to have, but on the other hand, it's kind of like, like where do I put a natural scope? Because that feature creep, especially when you're teaching, is the pull is so strong because you're wanting to show off like oh, and this tool is really helpful, and this tool is really helpful. Whatever else. So speaking of CMS, Scott Spence just joined the chat there. Hi, Scott. So speaking like when you have these abilities to expand, and there's like oh well, this one more thing would really round out this picture. It's really, really dangerous because you can just build like a crazy huge thing super fast.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like I said, that's really good to have because you can build a lot more content and it can fit more use cases.
So now you have when it comes to the developer advocacy team, and especially even at Hasura, a lot of times people have specialized in one or two techs that they then will overlap with, or they'll kind of bring a special flavor of how that pairs with Hasura. What kind of technology are you bringing to the table? Are you going to be like, what kind of content can we be seeing you produce? And while we're talking about what it is that you're already bringing, I would actually love to hear from chat what content you would actually like to see this year. So what are some of the technologies you would actually like to see us write about, do any kind of integrations with? We have, the new REST connectors and stuff. Which APIs would you love to see us do demos with? So free for all in chat there. Definitely make some noise and let us know what it is that you would like to see this year. And so while we're talking about what Catalin's bringing to the table, we can maybe go back over and see what some content is that people are getting excited about. So anyways, so what kind of what stack do you bring, and what's the stack you're wanting to learn and be able to expand on?
So like I said, I'm coming from a backend landscape. In all my previous jobs, I worked mainly with Node.js, PostgreSQL, MongoDB, not so much with front-end frameworks. So now, I started for a while to learn front-end frameworks. I started with Vue, and then I started learning React as well to compare the two to see how they differ from each other. So I would like to create content in that space, focusing on the front end now. And of course, I think my Node.js skills will help me when I write custom actions, remote schemas, and so on.
Nice. And so if you've got a Node background, and I don't think there's any standardized way to pronounce this other technology. But are you going to be doing anything with Deno then this coming year? Have you looked into that at all, or?
That's a good idea. I've never looked into it. I heard about it, but that was...
Yeah, I saw that they have the new HTTP bindings as of maybe 3 or 4 releases ago now. But supposedly it makes for some really, really fast code. It would be interesting to show, because Hasura, when it does the remote schemas, for example, so if you did a GraphQL server that you were meshing in, you'd be able to forward on the subscriptions that you could do, because Deno supports push, which would be interesting to kind of see if there's any weird hackery that might be around there. But yeah, so Deno would be fun. Anybody in chat working with Deno? It'd be kind of interesting to see what the appetite is in terms of that. I've got a weird thing blocking my chat view, but
Yes, Scott said Svelte, or however
Svelte, yeah.
however you pronounce it.
I mean, people who go into Svelte like it. So I mean, I like to knock on it in the same way that as an American I like to knock on Canada, but there's like no actual good reason for it. It's just, it's because it's not where I'm currently standing, and right now I'm not even in either of those countries. But so I think as a React developer, it's fun to just knock on something that you don't use.
Yeah, but
um,
I heard good things about Svelte every time I mention about front end frameworks or React or Vue. Someone tells me to try Svelte, so maybe
yeah,
I
a lot of
will
people say
soon.
that it feels very just it feels lightweight in working with
Mhm.
it. Like you can really be able to reason about your application, but perhaps if you're relatively um, like you don't need a lot of framework knowledge. And I've had to go in and
Mhm.
hack around some Svelte projects in the past, and I think that that's one of the benefits is that it does you do identify the parts. If you've been in the web game for a while, you'll identify the parts really easily because they map to things that like that's styles and that's scripts and
Mhm.
that's HTML, and so I think that there's probably value to that. Yeah, that
One
could be a
of
fun one.
the hardest things when I started to learn React was seeing the, how can I say, using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript all in one place. So
Yeah.
I had to pause my React learnings and go to Vue. Vue made much more sense because everything
Hmm.
is in its own separate place. I was able to learn the concepts and everything better, and after that, I was able to pick React much easier as well.
Yeah. Yeah. React is. I mean, I love it, but that's partially because it was the first real framework that I picked up after. So I started writing web apps with jQuery. Well, initially with vanilla JavaScript, um, and because I was around the tech space, but I was more in my design phase when everybody else was writing like no CSS stuff. but I transitioned into a developer where jQuery was kind of more or less stabilizing as sort of the thing that people use. And that was kind of like what I was learning. And then right about when I did that, Angular blew onto the scene like crazy. And so I was into that for a little bit. But I had a very unstructured roadmap into learning. And so there was a lot of like, I
Mhm.
was learning a lot of different pieces at the same time. I literally was like, okay, I'm going to become a developer now because I had studied marketing. A bunch of people had hired me for marketing jobs because I knew some HTML, and so I said I'm going to learn. I can remember the stack now. So I was doing simultaneous courses in Python, PHP, Ruby, and JavaScript.
Whoa.
So I thought I'm just gonna like learn it, just like real quick. Like I'm gonna just learn all these things, and I quickly changed that learning path, and it made me appreciate the value of a structured learning approach. So I
You know what's
I
funny?
went all in on JavaScript for a long time, and it was a good horse to bet on because it definitely has a lot of trajectory. But now going into TypeScript and stuff, I really appreciate what people are saying about like typings are nice, like strongly typed languages are nice. But I only got through strongly typed to seeing the benefit of strongly typed languages by working with GraphQL. Otherwise, I would not have really, I think, even been exposed to that much. But yeah. Anyways,
Yeah,
enough about my path.
going back to what you said, I think many people, at least in the beginning, do that mistake. I was the same. I was like, this month I'm gonna learn these 10 technologies and then start building apps, but you soon find out it's not possible. And regarding TypeScript, I think it's 1 year now since I keep saying I learn it, so maybe I should.
Yeah, I told myself that I was and I got about halfway through it, but I wanted to learn R because I was in my data scientist phase where I thought I was going to become the next, data analyst. Turns out you need to have a brain that thinks that way, and I don't. But I took a couple of series of courses on statistical analysis and on statistics and all of that. But then I redid all of the coursework in R. So that'd be like the way that I would learn R. Apparently taking two things you don't know and trying to like learn them at the same time is difficult if you have a weak understanding of the fundamentals. Now I'm doing the same thing with getting into embedded hardware with Python. And I'm doing that approach now, but I understand like the fundamentals underneath the pieces. And so there's like a lot more framework to hang understandings on and go, okay, I understand like most of this pathway between these 2 points, but I need to bridge this thing here. And then you can bridge that with like a quick YouTube video or something, and then you've got it. But yeah.
If I may ask, is this out of passion or as a hobby, trying learning embedded stuff?
It is so this is definitely a hobby from wanting to get into embedded devices, and I want to actually. So hopefully down the road, I'll actually be able to roll out some like doing like edge computing that I then bring into a Hazura instance and kind of like look at IoT and Hazura and kind of explore that space a bit more. So, but I'm a little ways away from there. But we'll see if end of year some of that content starts hitting the interwebs. If you are into embedded devices, let me know. I'll be happy to talk and so I think there's a space for GraphQL in particular to explore beyond clients, web clients. And so right now it's very much web focused, and I think that there's a whole lot more that GraphQL is able to do. You've got sensors. Let's just take sensors as an example, and with Hazura, anything that you can connect to is a data source. Like if you do system OS or if you do a bunch of different sensors that you're able to attach to, and now we have streaming subscriptions, like this is a really compelling space now to be able to say, well, I want to look at all of my nodes, and these nodes may support temperature and humidity, and those ones might have a Boolean value of something being on or off. So I think there's some interesting opportunities here for exploring. But
for sure. Do you keep I don't know, a public journal or something? Maybe we can follow your
I'm starting
learnings.
one. If anybody has a good suggestion. So I've been a Obsidian user for a while for my PKM, my private knowledge management, for those that are into that stuff. I've been using that for a while, but what I'm missing is a PKM that also has support for running blocks of code inside of it. They all have syntax support. So at the moment, I'm kind of thinking I'm going to end up with a Jupyter notebook. I was playing around with that a little bit over the weekend, and it works out pretty well because then you can actually do like math jacks, LaTeX, showing the equations and stuff, and then be able to put your variables in there and provide inputs. That's where I'm leaning towards, because I haven't found a better option. But if anybody in chat as well knows of a good, logsec or something kind of like that actually supports embedded code blocks, then it'd be interesting. Foam or Dendron, neither of which I can run code. Yeah, that's the problem, is most of them don't run code blocks. So Observable HQ, I'm a huge fan of. That's an online. Are you familiar with that?
I didn't use them, but I heard about them. I just installed Logsec like a few days ago, but I didn't start using it.
Let's take some time here and kind of look at some of these things here, because it's kind of interesting for people to see. I'm gonna probably have to open up one of my personal browser instances here to show this. I'm going to share a window. What's that?
Learning how to supercharge taking notes.
Yeah,
I heard they are pretty advanced, Obsidian and the other one.
Let's see if we can get some Hazura into Observable HQ for a little hacking, learning, and public thing here. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in here with, I believe, GitHub. Will be my path here. So here's an example of where I was just testing it around and playing with it. So that's probably a little small. Let me boost that font size here. I wonder if I can. I'm going to go and publish this one just so I can actually get like a nicer view. Just publish that. And yeah, there we go. I think that will. Supposedly, there's a way to, I think, collapse these blocks down. I want to see if it does that in incognito browser or. What I'm trying to do is hide the blocks. But for anybody who's not familiar with how observable works, it's kind of an interesting little utility here. Can I collapse those down? You used to be able to. It might be something that I know they did a recent update, so it might have been something on classic versus non-classic, because I think that's maybe just a broken functionality here, because it used to work that you could actually collapse these. What if I switch to classic view?
But are these your notes, or is something that comes by default?
No, these are my notes from just something I was working on. I don't like that either. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch. Like this was just playing around. But so basically, what you can do is you can take a you can define like inputs, right? So you can have this thing. Let's go and make a blank document. This is what I was talking about in terms of being able to embed variables with MathJax. So if we did something like, for example, then you could actually update the MathJax inputs, which would help create sort of a document to help people kind of visualize how do these numbers relate to each other and where do they plug into the formulas. And like I said, this was in process. Let's go make a new document here and just kind of show a little bit how it works. I haven't worked with it a crazy ton myself, but it has a lot of interesting functionalities. The thing that I had done with it way back in the day was a data viz. I don't even know if that still works with GraphCMS, GraphCMS, and a wine chart that I built on there. I don't know if that is attached to this account at all.
Did you store data about wines in your database and then?
I had done.
You have that wine fully food pairing.
This might be it. I don't know. This might be broken. We'll have to find out. I think this is broken now. That's a shame. See if there's it's usually always going to be like one area that it's probably a function of the API no longer being correct. But you can see what the promise of a tool like this is. Let me go ahead and open up a Hazura instance here, and I'm gonna just see what I have inside of my. Well, that's funny. I was going to display one of those text values. It shows the right one, that's for sure. Let's go ahead and see what I've got, if I have anything inside of GitHub. We're just going to see if we can put like something on the page here. I don't know if I have any content at all. You may have to just try and make something up on the spot and just see how we can connect this. Zero content in there. So I'm going to make a really fast new project, and we're just going to go ahead and use the free tier for this.
And a small tutorial how to start your Hasura project.
Yeah, let's go and launch the console on there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and first enable public access on this. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my unauthorized role. Hazura, live typing, here we go. Anonymous, what's it called? It's the unauthorized, there we go. And I'm going to just go ahead and call this anonymous. We just have that role that we'll use here in a minute. And when I go back inside of the console now, what I'm going to do is just boot up a little table here. So we need to throw a fast database on here. Accessing US West from Germany. It's always great for speed. I'll just I'm not even authenticated with Azure. All right. I have this is my private GitHub profile that is or Google profile that is right now.
So now you have to log in everywhere. Heroku.
Maybe. So we'll see. I mean, this is kind of interesting, right? Because it's showing totally from scratch, like no previously authenticated accounts. So that's kind of fun. Got a database hooked up. Let's go ahead and throw a table on there. Let's run with the wine idea anyway. So we're gonna make a table called wine. I'm like freaking it out here a little bit because I'm moving too fast. I think need to let things load. I'm asking it to do quite a bit here. All right, so we're gonna make a wine table. We're going to throw the common ones on there. So we'll give it the UUID. We'll give it the created at, the updated at. And we're going to go ahead and give it a name, which will be a simple text field for now. And I will go ahead and just allow that to exist. Still looking for chat to be mentioning some technologies they are excited about this coming year. So it can't just be Svelte. I know you're excited about more stuff than just Svelte. I think Svelte's a cool library, but it's got to be more than just Svelte. Let's go ahead and make this accessible from the outside world here. So I'm going to go ahead and allow my anonymous role to not have insert rights. But we'll go ahead and give this select permissions here. So we'll just go ahead and say that anonymous is allowed to select without any checks. And we'll give it permission to everything. So we'll save that permission there, which will now allow us to head back over here to this new one. So I'm going to make a new document. We're just going to call this the Hazura test. So I'm writing Markdown in here, Hazura test. And then I have the ability to add JavaScript here now. So I can just straight up call JavaScript and render the results. So let's add a couple of values in here so we have something to fetch. I'm going to go ahead and go over to the insert row here. And we're going to just grab some very basic ones that'll show off the depth of my wine knowledge. I will only accept red wine suggestions. And Shiraz is a red, right? That's a red, I think.
I don't even know one.
That's fine. It's not so important. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do a search here for wine that we'll grab the name on, and that should give us a list. What do I have? I do have some variables carried over from a previous session. We have our query, returning wine, and don't anybody start yelling about the uppercase table names. Okay, I'm moving fast here. All right, so we're going to take this API and we're going to try to fetch, and we're going to just try to spit these out into a table. So if we come over to the thing here, we could go ahead and add other content in there. We could say this is an example of using observable and Hazura as a JavaScript Jupyter ripoff. Java Juter. All right, so we have that. We're going back to the JavaScript block now, and we're going to try and write some JavaScript code. I actually very rarely use the code exporter, but I'm going to do that in this case and just see how well that works. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the get wine names query. And then I'm going to use the code exporter, and that should actually give me the ability. Yeah, here we go. JavaScript. I'm going to zoom out a little bit because it's a little bit messy. I'm going to use JavaScript, and I'm going to use the. Oh, this looks a little bit broken. That appears to be asking me. Something? Yeah, I think this feature might be just a little broken. I'm going to go ahead and copy this and see what it gives me, or maybe I'll just copy it like that. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and head over to the. So it gives me the operations. Okay, I'm going to head over to the observable here inside of this JavaScript block. So we've got an async function. I'll be curious if that actually works inside of here, but we'll have a look. Async function, fetch GraphQL, takes in an operation doc, an operation name, and the variables. It's not actually grabbed the API. So I will paste that in here. I copied that from previously. And it's going to send in that operation doc. It's going to send in the variables. I do not like the way that is written. So we're going to just go ahead and do it like that here, so we can just reduce some of our excess code here. I was already got variables operation name. Okay, so we'll leave that one to exist. That's fine. Variables, we can knock that down. And then it returns the result.json. Okay, so the operation doc here is the query. The name that's okay. So basic fetch request here. Start fetch get wine names. So this is the top level request that it's doing. Now, what I'm curious about is what's actually funky here is okay, it's empty on okay, it's fine. We'll see what it does. I don't think it's going to do what I want it to do yet, because I don't think it supports the async from the top level. So we'll see what errors it throws here. So it doesn't like consts, which is going to be a problem. So I think there's a number of those here.
Back to var. Long time no see.
I think what needs to happen, I think I need to break these out into individual functions, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to go ahead and make a new JavaScript block up here that this one. See if that is happy just existing. Good. So we have an async function created at the top level, so we can collapse. Yeah, that feature's broken. Oh well. I wonder if Grammarly is getting in the way. Yes, turn off for this session. I wonder if Grammarly is getting in the way here. No. Okay. So we have that piece. We need the doc now, which actually is its own variable declaration like this. So operation doc like that. These are all code blocks, right? So they're all the individual blocks you would normally write. You write them as standalone blocks. So then we have.
So it doesn't work in one block.
It doesn't work in one block unless you. I think you need like a closing scope on it. Is probably what's happening here. So that function is so it's still getting happy. It's fine so far with the conversion. So we have the last function to go ahead and define here, which then should allow us to basically return just this, which we're going to give it the property of wine names equals the return on that. So let's see what we get. So it's returning back empty here. We can see if we got, let's see how far we actually get here. So I want to see if I can view the console. If you want to try and pop this into the side of the browser or in the bottom of the browser so we can at least sort of
So this is an
code debug
alternative
this.
to Jupyter, this observable HQ.
Yeah, kind of. So what do we got here? We've got, well, I'm getting the wine back. Interesting. So there's a console log happening up here that actually is okay. So because I'm not returning the data probably,
Yeah.
so I need to actually just return the data. And so now if we run this down here, we get the wine back. Check that out. And so here we can come down and say something like wine names.wine. I want to say there is a special table syntax to spit out a table. Let's go ahead and see what we can find in the documentation here. So we've got, let me just search for table of contents. That's not what I was looking for, but a tutorial showing how to edit cells, import data, create a table. Let's see if that shows us maybe some kind of a utility. They have all kinds of interesting utilities for being able to spit stuff out. So how do they, inputs.table. Okay, so they're taking in a basic, let's see what we get. Let's see what we get. Let's try it. Inputs.table. Let's try that. Heyo! Check that out.
Really nice.
So if this was working to the extent that you could actually be able to close these down, then or collapse these, you would definitely get a much cleaner interface, and you should be able to. That's a bug they're gonna for sure fix. But then you can see how the mixture becomes really interesting, right? Because you can do things like I can insert a markdown block above here and do something like say a common list of red wines that an untrained person might know. And then you can sort of like mix your data here in between these. So that's kind of fun. I'm curious with the amount of time, because nobody in chat's talking about any other technology they would like to learn this year. Unless this VUM NGO is one, that one I'm not familiar with.
Never heard about it either. So
you can add some additional details there, but there's the second time that we see an NGO. There's VOR NGO and then VUM NGO. So I'm not sure if those are related. Let me just this is dangerous to live Google what somebody posts in chat. It's a scam.
Well, yeah.
So
trying to execute some bots or what?
Maybe. Put them in timeout. That's a little bit nicer.
This looks really cool. Tomorrow I want to compare this one with Jupyter.
Yeah, and then I would guess that there is a way to take like a button I don't know what the syntax is here, so I'm going to go ahead and guess something like I would have to check the inputs. Well, we can actually maybe we can figure it out by just returning that. Because I'm thinking if we could potentially mutate over that table input, then there might be an opportunity to actually create some interactivity.
I'm looking to the documentation now.
Okay, I will try to shoehorn in on this wine map. We will return the actual data, and then the action, the inputs button of some kind here. Let's see if that gives us. So we're getting like something there.
So if you call button and add something like click me, or if you add parentheses, yeah, I don't know if it works there, but above.
Where do you need to put it?
Yeah, the same thing, but the button above, inputs dot button, or the one above the table, or it doesn't have anything to do with this one.
Okay, so that works. So if we call this the test, I now call this one down here. So the form, I'm guessing, doesn't render HTML components. The table does not render HTML components outside of their standard lib. Obviously, it takes.
So it has something interesting. It's view of.
View of is a dynamic input. So what you can do is, if we were to make a this is where it becomes kind of Jupiter-y, right? So we're going to go ahead and just remove this garbage for now. If we were to modify our query here, so we're going to go ahead and say wine. Actually, I'm going to modify this inside of Hazura so that I get it right with the actual syntax help. Wine, where the name, when we're going to do a I like, and I'm going to just do, like, as a test, pin. And I think I need this to be, we're going to do a really just dirty search here with basically, I think this means anywhere you find it. Yeah. So if we take this query and we paste this back inside of observable, so we get this document here. We can now make this be a dynamic bit for a search. And search can be I'm not sure if order matters. I want to put it here, so we're going to test it to see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and say view of search equals inputs text label line search, and value, we're going to go ahead and leave that as an empty string.
So can you make it dynamic?
So now if I type in pin here, I think in theory, it should.
Do you need to play that running button?
Yeah, I was hoping maybe it would be smart enough to be able to. It's possible that the order of execution matters too. So let me just put it up here, and we rerun. But the thing, I think the view of it's supposed to make everything dynamic. Is the thing. Let me go ahead and inspect again. So I want to see if it actually calls out the. If it actually calls out that request when I made a change there. So let me go ahead and make another change. And we're actually just about out of time for the show. But let me go ahead and just test it real quick here. We've got the, well, it didn't. 1 second. What's going on? Did I not make the doc?
Oh, there is 2 times or?
Yeah. This is the rendering of this code. So that's fine. So we go ahead and do that because it's rendering live, right? It's rendering pin, of course. So now that should actually say pi when I go down there to the document. Yeah. Okay. So if I go back now to inspect, and I go to the network tab and I run another update here to be pin. So we are getting the executed request, and we're getting, what are we getting for the actual request here that's going out the door? We're getting the payload is, so it's actually sending the correct query, the correct bit, but for some reason the behavior here, I see, because that needs to respect my, what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify, and then we're going to have to call it a day, but I'm going to modify this to be my ignore casing, ignore location wrappers, because I was ignoring that on my search string. So now if I come up here and I type in just pi, I'm so confident, I'm just gonna do it like this. What we should get, no results. Try again, because what we should be seeing is we should be getting the oh, interesting, it's still ignoring. Maybe I needed to play that because it's still ignoring the, now it should work.
Nice.
There we go. So, and let me go ahead and check to see if we can actually put this within proximity. So now if I type in mer, look at that. We've just built a nice search utility here inside of observable, which took us directly at the hour. So anyways, this was a very rambly and like, yeah, all over the place chat from learning, exploring, and basically that is the journey how both of us ended up here at Hazura. Is there's a technology or a way to work with code that is interesting and a way of learning in public, and tools like this are really helpful. We would love to hear and see the stuff that it is that you want to see. So either on this YouTube video, if you're watching this after the fact, definitely comment, let us know what it is that you're wanting to see, or on Twitter, if you happen to see this, you can respond there on Twitter. We would love to know what technologies you're excited about, because this is totally what we like doing, is exploring new areas and being able to surface the best content that's out there. We don't think these magical thoughts about like code. We work, we condense, and we go out there and we have the time and the resources. Hazura makes that available for us to go out and research and combine and find the best practices, or bring the people that have the best practices in and have them be able to teach this stuff. So if there's a technology that would really make a big difference for you at work or in the projects you're working on, we'd love to hear it. So we got a lot of cool stuff planned, but we always want to see what the community wants to actually see. And you'll probably not see observable again from me, but anyways. That's pretty fun stuff. If you want to see Jupyter Notebooks next week, let me know. Actually, next week we have. I can tell you who we have next week. Next week we have a good chat with. I'm gonna just pull it up. Next week is with. Yeah, super tokens. So it's going to be a nice auth story next week. So if you're into super tokens or are curious about that, let us know. That's going to be a really fun one. So, Catalin, thanks for joining. A lot of fun today. Nice to have you on the team. It's going to be great seeing what it is you bring and are able to contribute. And with that, you want to tell people where to find you on the Twitters?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me on this stream, for the nice words, and for everything. I appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at Catalin Pit. So if you have any, questions or ideas for tutorials or whatever you want to see with GraphQL and Hasura, you can message me directly or get in touch.
Very good. All right. From us on the Hasura side, we will see you next week at 10 a.m. Pacific. Have a nice week, everybody.